Say something profound. I guess. Woo.
So Matt, why is this called Oak Hill?
Oak Hill?
Oak Tree? I figured, but I wasn't sure.
You know, I don't know is the answer, but let me just say this. I doubt most of these places on the battlefield had a name before the battle. All right, if you think about your little hometown and every little hill that's in it, you know, there's no names for it, you know, until you get there. I had a author, his name is Styple, S-T-Y-P-L-E. He's got a couple, he's self-publisher, but he's really published some really nice stuff. You can usually find him selling his books literally in the front door of the visitor center bookstore. But he told me the other day that he had a letter he found from a Confederate that he published after the battle, and the Confederate, this is in July, and he actually named, this Georgian actually named Devil's Den in the letter, which a lot of people poo-pooed because the Confederates wouldn't have known the name, is what they were arguing that early. So, where'd you come from? I expect to see you. Any of y'all got an extra can of bug spray? We got some newbies here, and they have no idea where I'm about to take them. Anybody got a can? Thank you. Yeah, you'll appreciate me tomorrow, right? We're 3 days from now. That's when those chiggers come up. So they didn't think, oh yeah. There's the guy, the John Deere hat and the Iron Maiden shirt. I was looking for you. Eclectic, right? I had on my bibs last night, which was eclectic. So they didn't think the Confederates would have known the name of Devil's Den that early, because, you know, and if you look at like Edward Porter Alexander's memoirs, you know, he talks about in his memoirs, you know, so many times in the Confederate reports that they refer to Cemetery Ridge as a cemetery. You know, and he goes to, he has 2 or 3 sentences in there, but he says, you know, we were wrong. We just didn't know. We're sitting over on Seminary Ridge, and y'all still courting there, brother? All right. So they didn't know, so they just mistakenly called it the cemetery instead of Cemetery Ridge. So going back to the lady's question, I mean, Oak Hill, I don't know, you know, we've got a real problem, the park that is, because, you know, we I don't know what you call it, denuded this strip of land that was here at the time, was not here at the time, what, 10, 15 years ago, and now we're running into the same problem. We can't put a bush hog in here because if you walk out in there, there's a lot of large boulders. You can see some of them right there. But you can't put a tractor in there because you can't see what you're going to, you know. You city folks, you just can't bush hog that, all right? So what are we going to do with it? You know, do you set it afire? I mean, I don't know what you do. I don't know if it'd burn if you did. You're going to want some of that. Deep, a nice little treat. I'm downwind. Keep going. Get that.
Thank you.
Darling, you'd appreciate it. Make sure you spray your legs. Them open-toed shoes. Woo! What enough.
Matt, I've got a question.
Yes. Question.
About the Florida regiment.
Okay.
Who was the one that tried to kill Secretary Seward?
Yeah.
From Florida.
Yeah. Too bad.
Right. He was here at Gettysburg, wounded, and I was wondering, just off the top of your head, what regiment of the Florida regiments he was in, if they know, or if...
Well, I got 1 out of 3 chance.
Yeah.
Brigade,
Yeah.
or something. What are the 3 regiments?
I'm assuming he was in
I think it's the second.
Second? He
Second.
would know.
Second.
You didn't wear a t-shirt. What's the matter with you? Is it second? You sure about that?
Got 1 out of 3 chances, boy.
According to my original research, I think it's the second.
Okay.
You watch them all and get spit.
If not,
Hey,
blame him.
1 out of 3 chances.
Make sure
What
you
can I
get him on
say?
camera. Make sure you get him on camera right over here because it's his fault.
Right.
Yeah. There you go. Whew. I know. Look at your watch. It's the last one.
It's been a long time.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I tell. That's pretty.
Nope.
Yeah, they got it all changed.
13 years ago.
13?
Yeah, where am I? Then it went blank on me.
Well, that's nice. It's nice to see people in love. Since we're about to talk about hate and death, there used to be like a when what do they call it? Camp Colt was here. The end of the base, I guess you would call it, was actually behind Little Round Top, somewhere in there on Tawny Town Road, at least in that area. And they used to have at some place, I don't know exactly where, they used to have a dance hall that was there. And the soldiers would leave the camp, on a weekend or whatever, weekend night, and they'd go over to that dance hall. And they, dance. So the question has become a lot of times, hey man, a lot of times I often wonder, since they would get a dance and then sometimes they would go across the street to Little Round Top, it begs the question, we know roughly how many people were killed on Little Round Top. The question is, how many people have been created? You never thought of that, huh? It's supposed to be an uplifting tour. It all started because y'all were holding hands. How about that? There you go. Devil's Den. You can't beat that. All right. Well, we do have a fine day, don't we? A lot better than last time. I think that's one of the hottest days we've ever had. The last time I tried to do this program here. We basically did it at that tree and at that tree, I think, didn't we? Stuff Rider. I'm going to take you we're going to do a little bit more walking, obviously, today with the weather being better. Okay, so, I'd like to welcome everybody to Gettysburg. My name is Matt, and this is the show, right? So what we're going to do today, I probably got, 40 people here, and I probably have about 35 that know what's going to happen, and about 5 that have no idea. The battle walk is a misleading name, all right? So I'm not doing the entire battle, okay? So people come out here, I always get people on these tours that think I'm going to cover the whole battle. What we're actually going to do is we're going to do a micro study of 2 brigades. So today we're going to be doing Iverson and O'Neill's brigade. That's North Carolinians and Alabamians. So we're going to take it down. What I'm going to do is take it down from a big picture down to a small picture. And so when we get down to the smaller area, that's when we'll do the roundabout and we'll follow in their footsteps. So, all right, so let me set up what's happening here. If you look out around the town, obviously you can see Gettysburg right over here behind Victoria. And when you see the buildings that are right there, you see the Gettysburg College. None of that was there. None of that modern development was there. If you peel your eyes, keep to the left of the tree right there, you can see the cupola that's over there. I believe that building was there at the time of the battle, but you still couldn't have seen it. So anyway, it's a little bit more wide open than what you see. If you look above the town, and you've got very good eyes, I'm looking to the right of the tree. So if you're to the left, you may not be able to see this. But if you look to the right of the tree, you see that distant tree line, which is the tallest. That's Cemetery Hill. And if you look on the left of Cemetery Hill, you can see the New York Monument right over there. And it's a clear day in order to do that. And, you know, it's obviously good visual. If you follow to the right and you go down to those Union monuments, which are over there, and you see the tallest one directly in front of you off in the distance. To the right of that monument is Round Tops in that area. So you've got this panorama up here on Oak Hill. You need to keep this in mind, because where I'm taking you, you're not going to be able to see this, but I'll be trying to describe it. Now the battle kicks off on the morning of July 1st, and the first Confederates are actually coming from the west. The mountain range which you see over there, the South Mountain Range or the Alleghenies, or both, however you want to term it. The Confederates under Henry Heath are going to be coming down the Chambersburg Pike, and about 7:30 in the morning they're going to fire the first shot, and that's Sergeant Marcellus Jones of the 8th Illinois Cavalry, and the Confederates are going to be held up to approximately a couple hours, 2.5 hours, until they reach Hare's Ridge, which is where that orange building, roof is over there. Okay, that's actually the Hare's Ridge Tavern. So the Confederates deploy where you see that development right there, and you can see from Oak Hill where we're standing now that the Confederates are there, and the town of Gettysburg is there, and they can clearly, quote unquote, smell their objective. They're right on the edge of getting into the town. So Heath is tired of being held up by this Union cavalry, so he ends up launching an attack. That's going to be Archer and Davis's brigade, and they're going to come up through the Chambersburg Pike, where you see the barn over there with the white ends on it off in the distance. That's the McPherson barn. There is no fear in McPherson, all right, if you're going to. James McPherson told me that, all right, in Vicksburg, Mississippi. So if you ever say the word, don't say McPherson. All right, so McPherson. Took me a while to get that out, but that's a true story.
Is this all farmland?
I mean, what are the odds of having not one but 2 Iron Maiden shirts on the same tour? If you really think about that, out of like what, 40 or 50 people, what is the odds of that? And why? Why would you bring out Eddie? I guess. Yeah.
Means you gotta follow it.
I guess. Iron Maiden, right? Yeah. Eddie. You know Iron Maiden. You know what I'm talking about. So the McPherson barn is right there, and on the other side in Herbst Woods, Reynolds Woods, McPherson Woods, however you want to term it, or call them all three, that's where Archer's brigade is going to be repulsed. If you look at the, right over there, that field of corn, yeah, that field of corn. If you look above it, you can see the bridge, which is right over the top of it in the distance, and that is where Davis's brigade, that's going to be the, where Davis's brigade is trapped. I forget how many prisoners, probably a couple hundred at least. Mississippians and North Carolinians are captured. So anyway, long story short, Heath's division is repulsed, and Heath retreats back to Hare's Ridge right over there. So he's licking his wounds. He's got a problem because Robert E. Lee has ordered all of his commanders, his subordinates, not to bring on a general engagement until the army's up. Well, guess what? They've done kicked it off. And so now Heath has gotten into a terrible fight and has gotten 2 brigades pretty much cut up. So anyway, he's licking his wounds. Well, to back up before he gets involved in this, the Confederate Army was had two sets of orders on the morning of July 1st or June 30th. They were either going to come to Gettysburg or they were going to concentrate at Cashtown, which we'll roughly say is approximately halfway between here and those mountains out there. So in the morning, Robert Rhodes' division, let me explain this, okay? So if you don't know what I'm talking about, armies are comprised of corps, all right? So we got A.P. Hill's corps coming from the west, and from Harrisburg area you have Richard S. Ewell's corps coming down, old bald head, and real weird dude. There's nothing to say, really. I mean, a weird dude, right? But entertaining. I like entertaining weird people. I don't like unentertaining weird people. Ewell gets word that the army is moving, or at least Hill's corps is moving to Gettysburg. So instead of marching around Gettysburg to Cashtown and avoiding Gettysburg, Ewell's corps is going to turn roughly from the north and head south. So this is probably one of the more confusing things for the people that first start studying Gettysburg, is we literally have rebels coming from the north. All right, so the south is coming from the north. All right, and the north is coming from the south. If that doesn't get any more confusing. Now, corps are comprised of divisions. All right, so I'm working my way down to our program today. And Ewell's corps has 3 divisions, and the one that Iverson and O'Neill's brigades are part of is Robert Rhodes. And possibly Robert Rhodes is the best division commander in the entire Army of Northern Virginia. That's arguable, but he's one of the finer ones, to say the least. Very aggressive, knows how to handle his troops. Or as you'll see, he thinks he knows how to handle his troops as we get out here. But he's what, basically, like Henry Heath, he's what Robert E. Lee wants out of a commander. He is an independent commander. He can make decisions independently, and above all, he is aggressive. Robert E. Lee wants aggressive combat commanders. That sometimes, most of the time, it works out, but here we'll see. Robert Rhodes' division, as part of Richard Ewell's corps, is going to turn, and they're going to come out on this hill around noon. And the situation is fluid. When Robert Rhodes pulls up on this hill, he gets to see the same sight that you do. I mean, he looks over here at Harris Ridge. He can clearly see an entire division of Confederate infantry over there. Probably the Confederate cannons were still firing. He could see Union battery over here somewhere roughly around the McPherson barn. And, you know, there's basically, he's got a panoramic sight of it right there. But Rhodes has got more to worry about. He gets here, and he instantly has to make a decision. He writes that on arriving on the field, I found that by keeping along the wooded ridge on the left side, which is the town of Gettysburg is situated. So if you're facing this way, that's the left side. There's Gettysburg over there. I could strike the force of the enemy with which General Hill's troops, there's Hill over there, were engaged upon the flank, and that, besides moving under cover, whenever we struck the enemy, we could engage him with the advantage of ground. So Rhodes pops out here, what? Like the lady was asking, or not asking, Oak Hill, he's on a hill. He's got the high ground, and he's looking down upon the Union troops, and his perceptions are that the Union line is facing that way. And if Hill is, rough night, huh?
Yep.
All right, so if he face this way, right here, his perception is the Union line's facing this way, and then Rhodes is facing this way. All right, so basically he thinks he's got the T crossed, that he can hit him in the flank right here. And so that's what he's looking up against. Okay, so Rhodes moves into position with Dole's brigade. Now I'm breaking it down even further. So corps are comprised of divisions, divisions are comprised of brigades, and brigades are comprised of regiments. Like a like a pyramid. See what you did? All right. Corps, division, brigade, regiment. Regiment, brigade, division, corps. The lower you go down the pyramid, the more units there are in the Army. So he deploys out of his brigade. He puts Dole's brigade, George Dole's brigade, in the valley, which is right over here on the other side of the hill. But we're not concentrating on him. And then he places O'Neill's brigade, the next in line, which will be right here where this scrub trees are growing right now. And then he puts Iverson's brigade on the right of that. So we'll get around. I'll cover Iverson second, but I put them right over there in that wood line. Some people put them all the way over there if you look at the maps. I don't know. Doesn't make much sense to me. But, you know, maybe they know something I don't. And then you got Daniel's brigade stretching out to the far right. Rhodes writes, while this was being done, Carter's battalion was ordered forward, that's the artillery, and soon opened fire on the enemy. Those guns, I don't guess we can see them, but where you see the cars, the furthest cars, where you see those two gentlemen walking up right now, Carter's battalion would have been all along this hillside. In fact, if you look at the ridge right through here, you know, the War Department puts the cannons by the monuments, but I imagine that artillery was all on the crest of this ridge right here, if you call it a ridge, or this hill right through here, and they're firing down into the valley. It's a very nice position, to say the least. So he writes, Carter's battalion ordered forward and soon opened fire on the enemy, who at this moment, as far as I could see, had no troops facing me at all. So that's this situation is going to change. Watch how this situation changes on the dime. So Rhodes doesn't see anybody. So his guns are basically firing at the Union troops, which are facing, like this gentleman helped me explain, they're facing toward here. The artillery exchange between the two sides continues to grow, causing Rhodes to shift his brigade. So they're getting pummeled. The Union's just not going to sit here and take that. So they're going to pivot their cannons, their batteries, and they're going to start firing here. And the shells are going to start ricocheting in. Well, guess what? You got all these Alabamians, which are out here in the open, and they're getting shelled. Well, you don't want good troops getting killed for nothing. So what is Rhodes going to do about that? I ordered the Alabama Brigade from the line it had occupied to fall back abreast with Iverson so as to obtain some little shelter for his troops. The right regiment, so that would be this way, facing this way, the right regiment, which was the 3rd Alabama, was under my order, placed on a line with Daniel's brigade. Colonel O'Neill being instructed to form the balance of the brigade upon it. In addition to that, on the other side, the left side, which is over here, the 5th Alabama is ordered to deploy in the valley to the left to try to cover the gap with the next Confederate brigade under George Doles. All right, so here's where it starts to unravel. Union troops begin to shift when Rhodes appears. So he writes, he had apparently, meaning the Union, he had apparently been surprised. Only a desultory, am I saying that right? Only a desultory fire of artillery was going on between his troops and General Hill's, semicolon. But before my dispositions were made, the enemy began to show large bodies of men in front of the town. So where I pointed out to the college, here, that's where the Union 11th Corps is going to be coming out. Most of which were directed upon the position which I held. And almost at the same time, a portion of the force opposed to General Hill changed position so as to occupy the woods on the summit of the same ridge I occupied. I refer to the forest touching the railroad, which is that forest right there. That's what he's looking at. And extending along the summit of the ridge toward my position as far as the Mumminsburg Road, which is that road right there, which crossed the ridge at the base of the hill I held. All right, so the troops that are coming out for the Union are the 11th Pennsylvania, the 97th New York. And those are the vanguard of the Union advance, and this is what Rhodes is seeing. So to rehash, where you see the monuments over there, Rhodes is sitting here. He's getting ready. He thinks he's got a golden opportunity. And my gosh, thousands of Union soldiers start appearing on that plain down below. Okay? And so they start deploying right there. And then you've got, right after that, you've got more Union troops that start coming out of that wood line right there. And what is Rhodes' perception? If you want to understand Robert Rhodes on July 1st, you have to understand what he felt, what his perceptions were at the time he's making these decisions. Now today, with 150 years, we know that the Union is not going to come up here and attack. All right? But he doesn't know that. You have to put yourself in that position. Rhodes views the federal movement as an attack. Therefore, he writes, being thus threatened from two directions, I determined to attack with my center and my right. So that means if he's facing this way, this would be his left, down in the valley. His center will be right here, and his right would be over there in the wood line right there. I determined to attack with my center and right, holding at bay still another force, then emerging from the town, in parentheses, apparently with the intention of turning my left with Dole's brigade. So he's going to hold the valley down there with Dole's brigade, which was moved somewhat to the left for the purpose, thus holding them until General Early's division arrived, which would strike this portion of the enemy's force on the flank before it could overpower Dole's. So in other words, you can't see it from here, but he's expecting reinforcements momentarily to come up and shore up his left flank. And so he feels comfortable with leaving that one brigade of Georgians down there to oppose the Union troops, the entire 11th Corps. In other words, what he wants to do is O'Neill would advance the Alabamians, which I've already quoted, that are back there in those woods, with Iverson covering his right flank. Daniel's new brigade, but large brigade of North Carolinians, would advance in echelon behind Iverson's right. Ramsey's brigade served as the division reserve. All right. Okay, so let me say the same thing over right here. This is him, Rhodes. Finding that the enemy was rash enough to come out from the woods to attack me, I determined to meet him when he got to the foot of the hill. There's the foot of the hill right over there that I occupied. And as he did so, I caused Iverson's brigade to advance, and at the same moment gave in person to O'Neill the order to attack, indicating to him precisely the point to which he was to direct the left of the 4 regiments then under his orders. Now keep that in mind, because I'm going to come back to this. O'Neill has 5 regiments. All right, now I already said the 3rd Alabama was lined up with Daniel's brigade back here. And then I said the 5th Alabama was down here in the valley. So, 5 regiments. Rhodes this is very important. Most people overlook this. He says he ordered the advance of 4 regiments. That's a bone of contention. I'll come back to that later. But this is the moment, and this is what Rhodes expects to happen right through here. All right, so let me line up some people and rehash this. You can get a picture of it. Kids out here. What are you doing, Bob? Oh, hey. How are you? Where's Beetle? Is it her birthday? All right. Now, I got any kids? Or are y'all all adults today? Right? You're going to put the dog out here? It'd serve as a good regiment. I guess right here. Don't have any kids. Well, how about that? Well, there you are, sitting right there. Come on, darling. You come on up here. I'm going to get in trouble for that one day, but that's what I constantly call my daughters. All right? It's just habit. Darling, 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 darling. Will you please, please get in the car? All right? Okay. I like Coach. Why don't you come on up here? I'm a real connoisseur, all right? So let's line you up like this, okay? So let me think how I'm going to do this. So I got Doles, I got O'Neill, I need Iverson. Who wants to be the
Here's Iverson.
Iverson right here? Oh, right here. Okay, come over here, boy dressed in skirt. Come over here. What is that anyway? Who is that? Okay. All right. Who is it? Who?
Stranger Things.
Stranger Things? I'm not up on modern stuff right here. I need one more. Okay, come on there, Blackie. Right here. Okay, so we've got 4 brigades that are going to go off in Rhodes Division. So to rehash, we are basically right here, standing here. She represents where we are, a little bit back, a few hundred yards back there, but I'll take you back. This is going to be Dole's Brigade of Georgians, which are down in the valley. They're not going to move, all right? So she's not moving. So what Rhodes wants to do is basically he wants to mount an echelon attack. And in order to do that, what that means by an echelon is that everything is keyed. Don't turn with me. Everything is keyed. We met yesterday. We're close friends. The cemetery. How charming. Yep. O'Neill's Brigade, Iverson's Brigade, Daniel's Brigade. Just for kicks and giggles, we'll make Ramsey. What did you just have to stand there? Ramsey's Brigade is in reserve right there, roughly right here. So what he wants to do is he wants to hold the left flank with Dole's Brigade and hold off the Union 11th Corps. With O'Neill's Brigade, take a step forward. She's going to go forward first, and everything keys off of her. What Rhodes expects to happen is, take a step forward, not up to her, is Iverson is going to cover, put your arm out, Iverson is going to cover her right flank, right here. O'Neill's right flank is going to be covered with Iverson. It's too early in the morning for this stuff, all right? So that's what he plans on happening right here. And then Daniels is going to come up and cover, in turn, is going to cover his right flank. Now, this is all fine and good in the simplicity of it, but if you note where the Union line is, this whole line, I won't try to make these people do it, but this whole line, especially the right flank, is look where the Union is. If they went straight, you know, they'd be marching at right angles to the Union line. This whole division is going to have to wheel, especially the right flank, in order to strike the Union line. That is not an easy thing to do, especially, you know, with 1,500 men. You don't put your arms down, thank you. You having a good time, aren't you? And you came to Gettysburg and thought you were going to be bored, didn't you? You should see my Birkenstocks. I done wore the heels off of them. Yep. Still wearing them, though. I guess when my heels start blistering from dragging the concrete, I'll get a new pair. So that's what Rhodes is up against. He's roughly got, you know, total, you know, if you throw in Ramsey, I'm not talking about the attack, he's probably got around 8,000 men in this division, but he's not putting them all into the attack at once. Right here. Where do you want to go there? Any questions?
Messages, yeah, I do. Messages were sent, I guess, when he was telling his commanders, you know, where to place them. They were handwritten, and then a messenger would bring them over. So in the heat of the battle, let's say this guy right here, all the way on the right flank.
Yeah,
okay,
Daniel.
If he did something that he wasn't supposed to, if he came over a little bit more, so if the messages were quicker, and he could tell him quicker not to do that, because
Yeah.
he had a cell phone.
Right. Well, Rhodes, let me see if I'm answering your question. Rhodes is, cannot be everywhere at once. And once you set a division in motion, there's only so much he can do. As far as Daniel's brigade right there, wheeling and so forth, you would expect a seasoned brigade commander to be able to perform that. Now, Daniel's is a new brigade to the Army of Northern Virginia, so I don't know, I'd have to look at it to see, but Daniel's may be an unfamiliar figure to Robert Rhodes. You know, this may be something he's not used to, at least working with Daniels right here. But a competent brigade commander, let me put it another way, a brigade commander would not want the interference from the division commander, ideally. You know, he doesn't want, it's like your boss, if you've got a micromanager. If you've got this project or this mission that you're gonna, or goal that you've set, and you don't want to be interfered with, you know, you don't want the boss hanging over your shoulder. You know, you want to manage your own troops right there. That's a reflection upon you to a certain extent. So Rhodes would probably, ideally want to be hands-off. And that may be his mindset. We're going to see as this attack unfolds that may be the wrong thing to do, especially with weaker brigade commanders, which is going to turn out to be O'Neill and Iverson. You probably need it. So another way to answer it is Rhodes is, to my perception, is going to pay a lot of attention to his left and center and very little attention to his right, because that's just the way he has to. Does that answer?
Yeah.
So there's the delay, of course, in the messaging and so forth. But you know, if I had a time machine, I could tell you where Robert Rhodes was at certain moments in the battle, which I obviously can't do that. But it may be simply he couldn't see a lot of things that were going on, you know, depending on where he is at the time.
But an official message would be a written message. It wouldn't be like a hand signal.
Yes. Well, a lot. Let me see if I'm answered. A lot of these messages are basically verbal. Like everything I just read to you is Robert Rhodes' report. Now he probably delivered those verbally, and probably it was one of his staff officers that did it, that would write out there. And that is obviously, you know, I got a lot of couples standing here. You know how verbal communication can go awry very easily. Where you think you're on the same page, but you're really not in the end. And you know, you could look at the Battle of Gettysburg. You look on both sides, but every battle has that verbal communication, and that's where, you know, it's a bone of contention, as you'll see as this story unfolds. Who said what when? It's all about perception. So yes, he should have written it down properly.
Does that tie in with, for instance, in Fonz's book on the first day, that Rhodes had a dilemma between keeping the initiative and doing the proper planning and disposition of his forces? He could go, or he could get his forces in the right position and then go.
Right. I feel he's hurried. I think we're saying the same thing in a different way. He feels pressed because basically he's meeting what he perceives as a Union offensive with a counteroffensive is what he's doing. In other words, Rhodes' philosophy is you don't stand and receive the attack. You meet the attack. You know, you could argue whether that's a good strategy or not, but that's his philosophy. You don't stand pat. There's some Civil War generals that feel that infantry on the move is a lot better than infantry that is stationary. You know, that you have the forward momentum and so forth, and you want to go out there and you want to hit them before they're ready and overwhelm them in detail as they're going out. So I think my perception is that's what he's doing out here.
Matt, when they were deploying to get here onto the ridge, were they coming from Hare Ridge Road, or they're coming down from the Harrisburg Road?
No, they're coming from the Carlisle Road, and that they took a left. That town's name has changed. What was that old town's name where they took the left and turned toward Gettysburg?
It's Biggerville today. It used to be called Middleton.
Okay, I was thinking something like Heidlersburg or something. Am I wrong on that? Am I right on that?
They walked from Heidlersburg toward Biggerville, and they went south.
Okay. So they're coming down the Carlisle Road. We can't see it very well, but that's the main axis to the north, running to the north, and you'll never believe where this road goes.
Carlisle.
Goes to Carlisle, all right? These are not trick questions. And sometimes I stand there, especially in front of school kids. Where does the Carlisle Road go? Biglerville? They're coming south, and I believe, somebody correct me, I believe the name of that hill, which is a mile or two outside of town, you know it when you got there, because you got to climb it. And on the top, there's these older hotels sitting up there. Always the cheapest rate in town, by the way. I believe that's named Keckler Hill, which is right there. Is that right? And so, man, I'm impressing myself. So Keckler Hill is right there, and when they get to Keckler Hill, now I'm moving this way, they turn off, if you want to get the exact way Roads Division. And the roads still exist. Keep up with me. I got two roads and roads here. They take a right. If I'm coming south, they take a right. So I'll be facing this way, they take a right. And that road still exists. It intersects at this at an intersection, maybe not far from here, but it's beyond that tree line. So anyway, at some point, and I don't know, if somebody knows, you would impress me at the exact point of this, but at some point, Roads Division is going to leave the road over here, and they're going to turn off, and they're literally going to follow. This is basically a ridge that runs to the north, and they're going to come through the woods. They're going to be moving through column. Now, I suppose, I don't know who exactly, but surely they wouldn't do that on a whim. Rhodes would have his scouts out, his staff officers, I don't know who it was, but somebody would be directing 8,000 men in order to get them to the battlefield. So they literally come from that direction at some point. They turn off the road and follow through here. There's a modern neighborhood outside the park up there, some houses that are 20, 30 years old in some cases. Nice houses, but somewhere in that neighborhood, if you ever drive that road, I would think that's where it came from. What are you doing back there? You can't listen to anything back there.
Wouldn't have Rhodes been meeting up with vedettes from Buford's Corps that was up, Buford's men that was up on Harrisburg and Carlisle Road?
Yes,
So
but they're not. Yes, sir. They're not though. The Union Cavalry is not doing the same thing. You're probably thinking they're trying to do the same thing they did to Heath. That Union Cavalry's just doing what they usually do and run. You know,
They would have probably seen the scouts though that were out on the road.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
So they
That
would have an
wouldn't
indication
give
the Union
him.
was on this side.
That wouldn't slow up Roads though.
No.
A couple Union Cavalry. That's not gonna.
You were saying about why they would turn on to Oak Hill.
Yeah.
If they're seeing that the Union is up on this end, or they have the cavalry up there, that would be an indication to him that, and I'm sure he's hearing the cannon, so that would be an indication to him that there's trouble up here.
Oh yeah. He didn't enter the field. He knew there was enemy forces ahead. Now he didn't know the strength and disposition of them, but he knew it. I think he slides. Let me answer it a different way. I think he slides toward Oak Hill, or he takes that coming down Carlisle Road. He takes that right because he wants to be somewhat connected to the rest of the Confederate Army. You don't want to throw them too far to the east over here, because you don't want Union troops on this hill. Okay, between you and you. All right, so that's probably why he'd slide here. This is not what you asked, but I'll throw this out. This is not the point of it all, but you can ponder this tonight while you're eating crabs at Dave and James. Okay. Weird thing. You ever thought about who was the first human being that was sitting on the beach and said, "I think I ought to eat that"? You ever thought about that? That's not a very rational thing to be doing. I think I'm going to eat this. Must have been really hungry. That's a good idea, I guess. In retrospect. Where was I going with that? The Union 11th Corps, but most people, because it never happened, so you don't pay any attention. The Union 11th Corps was actually ordered to come up here and extend the line of the 1st Corps. And so instead of being like how it ended up, which is basically the 11th Corps is going to be positioned this way, and the Union 1st Corps is going to be positioned this way. So they're at right angles to each other, all right? And what they were supposed to do was basically be on line with me. So you could argue, just getting off in the weeds here, that if Rhodes would have been a couple hours late, he may have had a golden opportunity, because I don't know how you defend this ridge when you're being attacked at right angles over here. That could have been really bad for the Union. Worse than it turned out. How about that? Yes, sir. Grumpy.
Just to make sure. So at this point, he's no longer trying to cross the T. What's his objective? Is he trying to get down at the 11th Corps, or is he just trying to get people out of the woods?
No, he's just. I just think he's going to drive them. He's going to develop the enemy's position, and when he gets it developed, he's going to push him. I mean, this is just. A lot of times, I think we put too much thought into it. You know, it's like Pickett's charge. It's not a complex objective here. They're going to go up to the ridge and shove them off of it. You know, and so they're going to attack them. And so, that's a bad omen. They're just going to hit the Union line, and they're just going to go from there. You know, and I think that he wants to attack. He wants to drive them back on themselves before they can get fully deployed. Step over here, right? Over here, face me. All right. So if she's the 1st Brigade, he's the 2nd Brigade, and we'll make this lady back here the 3rd Brigade. What Rhodes wants to do is he don't want to face 3 brigades. He wants to face one at a time. So he comes up here and he shoves them. He attacks them right there, drives them back on them, and it just rolls on them. And hopefully, I imagine he's expecting support from Heath over here too.
Is there any evidence for Buford's cavalry up here in the early morning at all? Any vedettes, or did that end at that moment for Road?
No, the Union cavalry. I'm not the world's expert on the Union cavalry here. But I do know the Union cavalry basically pickets all the roads to the west and to the north.
But up here specifically,
I wouldn't think so. They're probably the vedettes, if I had to gather, would probably be connected with the road that connects them with Hare's Ridge, or maybe even beyond that. My understanding is like picket post is the furthest picket post has the least men, and then it just, there's multiple ones. We usually think of them as one, but it basically. You start out with maybe 2 men, and the next one has 10 men, and then the next one has 30. You have a reserve and all this. I'm just trying to figure out how much school debt we got between these 2 T-shirts they're wearing right there. A small amount right there. Bet you're Catholic too, aren't you?
Yes.
I don't know. Right? Yes, sir.
Two points. Do we know much about the artillery, effect of the artillery fire up here, and part 2, did they affect what Rhodes did?
What do you want it to do? Do you want it to? I can't say that in a nutshell. I don't think either side overwhelmed the other.
But was the artillery fire up here effective?
Well, I don't know how to gauge that. It made Rhodes move O'Neill. Whatever was happening, it was planting enough shells on those Alabamians that he felt the need to move them. So I guess if you count that as effective, it's just very hard, ladies and gentlemen, for Civil War artillery to reach that. Look at Pickett's charge, the pre-bombardment. I mean, how much more firepower can you put up on the line? And look how ineffective it was. It's just really hard to change the course of a battle with just artillery. But I forget, what was it, Frederick the Great or something. It makes, what did he say? Artillery makes what would be a brawl into a something. Refines it right there. There is, I will tell this story because I'll forget when I get over here. Reportedly, I forget whether this is a Union or a Confederate account, but reportedly, one of the, I think it's Dilger, don't quote me, but the Union battery that's down there reports that he fired a perfect shot. All right, and the shell, what I mean by a perfect shot is the shell was fired from the valley and entered, check this out, entered the bore of the Confederate gun right through there. Wow. You don't believe it? No, you don't believe it? All right. I mean, it's in theory, it could happen. I mean, the odds of that would be tremendous, and that's probably why he noted. I think that's in his report.
Yeah, after the battle, they said they came up here and they found the tube with the ball right in the...
Oh, okay, I didn't remember that part of it. Okay. All right, where'd the T-shirt guy go? Oh, okay, come on up. t-shirt guy. All right. Hey, how are you?
Good,
All right.
you
And so, I don't know what more impresses me, 2 Iron Maiden t-shirts or the fact that Stuff Rider is wearing William T. Sherman. Now, who would expect a William T. Sherman on Oak Hill? Right here. And that's more impressive, I think. So, this is, you're going to have to rotate for me right here. We'll do it first here. So you got Daniels, O'Neill, Doles, Iverson, and Ramsher. All right? Daniels, is this weird? Daniels, O'Neill, Doles, Iverson, and Ramsher. Okay, here's the 5 brigade commanders of Rhodes Division right here. All right? So we're going to have him rotate right over here. We'll have him come over here. This is pretty fancy for Matt, all right? What do you think of that? Gettysburg College, you like that? All right, so you turn around right here, you see what I'm talking about? So this will be Daniels, O'Neill, Doles, Iverson, and Ramsher, all right? We're gonna turn right here, all right here. What do you think of that? Yeah, you like that? All right, here you go. All right, what about a round of applause for the He just needs one more core symbol. That's all he needs right there. Probably just collapse from the weight.
No, it's not too bad.
All right, so we're going to go in the woods. Now, I done told y'all we're going in the woods. That's exactly what I told my girl the other day, one of my daughters the other day. I said, don't touch that pan, it's hot. Well, guess what? I told you. We're going in the woods. And we're going to make a big circle. We're going to go back here. We're going to go through the woods. I'm going to show you some stuff. I don't think it's groundbreaking, but it's pretty cool because otherwise you wouldn't walk back here unless we were on this tour. We're going to go back in here and find where Iverson and specifically O'Neill's Alabamians were in this area. And we're going to make it, it's going to be, you know, I wouldn't say it's the most treacherous territory, but we're going to descend down the bottom of this ridge and get on the railroad and make a big circle and come around, all right? I was sitting in a place last night and I met the railroad policeman. He was sitting right across from there. So I told him we should go out there. He was giving me a big lecture about that. So I told him we'd be out here today, so I guess it's okay. All right, so let's go on up here. Waterloo. What's that?
Someplace over the other side of the ocean. Oh, that's
Damn. Two guys like probably use him as a schoolboy, man. That was a joke. All right. So, who knows? Napoleon versus Robert E. Lee. What do you think about that? All right, y'all watch your steps. Y'all watch your step because this is not a trail. All right, you'll see that shortly. Okay. He's got all these historians that write these essays, and I think Crick and Chesterfield wrote that. And he's got sources in there about that are, you know, obscure. He even names the age. He's got the whole. Cool, because that's what I'm looking for. Oh yeah. Oh, if that's with the level of detail. You flanking me? Wahoo's flanking me right over here.
That's Chief Nakahoma.
Chief Nakahoma.
This is a demonstration of difficulty moving large bodies of troops. Imagine if there was 10,000 of us.
There would be. There's always a couple of people out of 50 that shouldn't be out here. Maybe this is what it's demonstrating. You shouldn't be here. But it's a free country. Supposedly. What do you do?
Since someone interjected,
I may need you.
earlier. If you've ever been to the Waterloo battlefield, it'll make you appreciate Gettysburg in that they, to commemorate the battlefield, they effectively ruined it, paving it level to make this big mound in honor of the Duke of Wellington, and it makes you appreciate what happened in Gettysburg in that battlefield to commemorate it. They ruined it.
Well, you know, it's a different style, obviously. Europeans just do it differently. You know, it's a, I think the War Department did, for the 5 original parks, I think they, I'm just used to it. It's hard for me to answer that, but it's just, I like it. You know, each one varies slightly, but they obviously put a lot of thought into it when they put it down. Even more is mind-boggling to me is when they ordered the cannons for these parks. I mean, they had to figure out what kind of artillery was with each battery, and then they had to requisition at least 1 or 2 of the types that were there. They had them.
How many guns are there around the battlefield?
It varies because they're constantly putting them on and pulling them off. There's roughly around 400 around. So even the carriages are historic now because they were actually contracted and cast here in Gettysburg. The metal carriages that you see on the field now. So Vicksburg when actually just replaced their carriages. What, about 10, 15 years ago? That was interesting to me. They surplused them off. You could buy one if you wanted one. I don't know what to do with it, but they didn't sell the tube. Yeah, I know. But Gettysburg chose to keep theirs. And so we actually have 2 or 3 men that are devoted constantly to rehabbing cannons.
I think the environment in Mississippi would be more detrimental to that wood and carriage than it
A lot of them were rusted, you know, collapsing beneath it. It become a safety hazard with the argument. But here, what's the dog's name?
Oscar, you don't remember he was little around talking on your program.
Oh, how nice. I'm gonna get a dog. My
You
cat.
said that last time.
Well, my cats are still living.
Did you get a good
Well, I don't know. You ain't met these cats. You know, they piling Mississippi cat. My grandmother, who's deceased, Pitty and Momo. They don't die. I've gone to the vet. I don't take them to the vet. Somebody texted me yesterday, you need to take the cat to the vet. No. The last time I took it in there, I got all these shots. I didn't want even anything to do with what I took the cat in there for. Cost me, oh my God, I don't even want to say how much I spent on that. I know. Yes, ma'am, I agree. I've gotten a lecture several times from the vet. You know, we all have a time on this earth. And I'm thinking, no, you don't know these cats. And sure enough, they didn't die. Still waiting, right? Not going to. All right, so welcome to the woods. Now here, I guess we need that Ralph Waldo Emerson. Somebody out here. I'm afraid I'm just not Ralph Waldo Emerson. It's beautiful little trees. Okay, so we're in the woods. So if I was going to be Robert Rhodes and I was going to position the Alabamians somewhere where they would be in shelter, why I brought you out here is I would put them in defilade, which is the backside of this hill right here. All right, so you got the shells coming in from here, and as I'll read you a couple quotes in just a little while, but this is where I put them, right in here, to give them some sort of shelter. I don't know if they laid down or whatnot, but they're veteran troops, so they shouldn't have a problem with a little bit of Union shelling. They're not going to be too nervous about it. All right. So Rhodes, if you remember what the last quote I read to you, Rhodes says that he ordered O'Neill to attack with 4 regiments. In fact, what O'Neill is going to do is only advance with 3 regiments. O'Neill and Rhodes, and you can read O'Neill's report, would never agree on whose fault it was that day. When O'Neill's brigade was withdrawn into the woods, Rhodes carefully placed the 3rd Alabama, the right regiment, my right over here, in line with the left of Daniel's brigade in order that his novice commander would know exactly where to align his men. That's what Rhodes intended. O'Neill claimed later that Rhodes retained both the 3rd Alabama on the right flank and the 5th Alabama on the left as a reserve. So O'Neill felt he only had, out of 5 regiments, he only had 3 under his command. In fact, Rhodes, for his part, claimed he retained only the 5th Alabama under his command. So, bone of contention is, who is in charge of the 3rd Alabama that's over here at Daniel's, on Daniel's left? The poor commander of the 3rd Alabama was a guy by the name of Colonel Cullen A. Battle. Could it get a better name? Cullen A. Battle. And he was ordered by O'Neill to stay aligned with Daniel's brigade. Now, Battle, quote unquote, is going to be a prominent figure if you ever study about the Battle of the Crater. Battle is going to be, I think, the brigade commander by July of '64, and he's going to launch the one of the first counterattacks against the Union penetration right there. So anyway, he's a competent fellow. Rhodes even personally warned Battle, quote, to keep well up on Daniel's left. When the advance began, you can understand why Cullen A. Battle is going to be confused. When the advance began, Battle asked for instructions from General Daniels. What do you want me to do, boss? I'm with you. Only to be informed that by Daniels that he had no instructions to give, because nobody told General Daniels that the 3rd Alabama was with him. So when he comes for instructions, Battle's like, what do you want me to do? And Daniel's like, what are you talking about? You're not with me. Right here. So 3rd Alabama just sits here, somewhere back in this general direction back there, and it never goes forward. They'll advance later with Ramser's brigade, and that'll be the 2nd attack of Rhodes' division. All right. Any questions? I wish I had a chair.
Well,
no, that would be.
I have a question. This
My
is
boss will watch this tape eventually. No.
But this being Rhodes' former brigade,
Yes.
How much does that play into what's going on here?
Well, just like Stonewall Jackson and the Stonewall Brigade, there's always an affinity for your first command. And generally, generals, even however high they go, they always have, a warm spot for the people that got them where they are. And so Rhodes this is his baby. Meaning the Alabama Brigade is his former command. He would have commanded them at Sharpsburg, I believe. And so he pays Tetum particular attention to he pays particular attention to the Alabamians. In other words, let's take Stonewall Jackson. Nobody that followed in Stonewall Jackson's footsteps as far as the brigade command could ever live up to whatever aspirations or bar that Stonewall Jackson set. If you look at the subsequent commanders of them, I mean, including what? Garnett, Richard Garnett, they never pan out. Jackson's always on their case about how they're handling his old command right there. So I imagine that has something to do with it. So, here we are in the middle of the woods. Alone. All right, so here comes the interesting part. We're going to go down that hill. All right, it ought to be all right until y'all can just pick your way forward until we get to the bottom. You'll know when we bottom out, we'll hit the railroad right there. Y'all be particularly cognizant when you cross that ditch, though, that lines along the railroad. I haven't seen it yet, but generally speaking, the railroad doesn't mow their embankment, so it could be. Don't underestimate how deep it is. All right. Any questions about that before I lead you? Trepidation. Last words. All right, they're here.
Get a camera.
So, what I want you to take in as we go down is something that is up to you, okay? All right, we're walking the line of O'Neill's Alabama Brigade, and these Alabamians would have been right along the crest of this hillside right here, lined up, and this is where they're going to step out. It'll make a lot more sense once we get out of the woods and we walk a couple hundred yards. You'll see where I'm taking you and so forth. But basically, we're following the line of the Alabamians.
And he boomed pulling the tracks there during the invasion. And then they shifted northward, I believe.
So do you know what kind of bird?
Your feather.
Oh, the bird. Oh, that's a turkey. If that ain't redneck, I don't know what is right there. I don't care, guarantee you.
I found it very disturbing.
You get hungry enough, you eat.
I said, we expect a nice cold beer and snacks after that.
Refreshment? Just wait, we gotta go all the way back up.
You must have checked to make sure there was an emergency physician before we did that.
Yeah. I don't know what time the train runs. I would just assume that you would have enough sense to move.
It's like Stand By Me. You have to put your fan on the track.
You know, maybe we'll be on the bridge.
I'm never coming back on a bottle wall with him again. Last week, whenever we were going one with Troy, you could hear the trains running, the whistles blowing up and down through here. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That comes out when they put this track in.
Good Lord. What happened here?
That's, you went straight through the woods. That comes out of the elementary school off of 34, right?
Yeah, Carlisle Road if you went straight from here. The elementary school probably be right through there.
Okay.
Is you wear that shirt?
Not on purpose.
Right.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I had that.
Well, all we need now is an Allen Iverson.
Oh, that's
talking about
right.
practice.
Iverson.
I think he would have been in the Confederate Army.
Yeah.
Right.
Not as a combatant.
I have a Sherman, if that could help.
You got a hair tie with you?
Maybe use the feather.
So we have two Shermans here.
That's what I was going to do.
Two Shermans.
Well, if you got a hair tie,
Oh,
I was
that's
gonna
true.
give it to you.
Sherman and Sherman.
Sherman and Sherman. Yep.
The Shermanettes.
Mysterious Stuff Rider does not allow his picture to be taken. He's actually not a real person. He's just a mysterious Stuff Rider.
A real person. Did the NSA get him for their voice on the one?
I don't think they could ever hear it. I don't know. Oscar might like the feather. I don't know.
I don't know if he would or not. You ever seen that?
Oh, yeah.
There's a herd of turkeys that guards the cemetery. Herd of turkees.
Really?
Yeah. And they will chase people across the road. Matt, when you first started out, you were talking about division to catch the first corps in front, right? Perpendicular to that?
Yes.
But now this alignment here has changed, so because he's now his attack front is going towards the town, not towards.
No, you'll see. Let us break out of the woods. It'll make a lot better sense. We're headed right towards where I'll get it from. We're headed right towards the observation. I know what the railroad tracks if we stayed on, but I'm not going to stay on the railroad.
But they were aligned like this.
They are aligned like this, and they're basically when we clear the woods right here, it'll make a lot better sense. But they're following the axis. of the ridge. As you'll see, they're not doing it very well, but they're the first to go too. So everybody else is supposed to perform.
Based on a novel.
No, I don't even think this was built. I don't even think there was a railroad here at the time. No, this is railroad the spur would have come in from the railroad would have ended at the train station, and they had a roundabout. That's it. You a train guy?
We watched that on the way down.
Also yesterday. Yeah.
I've only watched the extended version once or twice. I think it's right. Yeah. Definitely cool.
That's it? You it?
The end of the line.
That's right.
Is there a campaign medal in this one?
Make your own.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody's shooting at it.
I actually got an email from the guy that fell out during the anniversary walk. He wrote the park, and I wrote him back. I didn't know the gentleman, but I wrote him back and I said, you know, you scared the. I got all these. I got 350 people and all these questions coming at me, and all I can think about is, is he going to live or not? Because I can't see him, you know. There you come to the realization that you have 350 people and no help. You didn't send anybody out there with me. You know?
Was he okay then?
Is he alright?
Yeah, he said he's fine. He actually, way I remember, way it was reported to me, and at the time that he wanted to stay. The word was sent back. I'd already called the medics, and they were coming. I could hear that the sirens going, and word was brought to me at some point that he wanted me to call it off, and I said no. Once you hear the sirens, we don't call it off. The cavalry's coming. Oh, was that captured on TV? Did they tape that portion of it? Okay. Tape kept rolling, huh? All right, well. Sometimes I wish they'd stop, you know.
This is the 150th?
What was this anniversary?
Oh, this year?
This year.
Oh, this year.
56.
Yeah, because you
Yeah,
said
so
like,
Independence
oh,
Walk.
he comes in.
Yeah, I think I
Maria.
see most of it. I don't remember that part.
You don't call
Is
Maria
that
off.
Gettysburg or stuff?
I think he said that
Stuff
too.
I should have it too.
Yeah, yeah.
Isn't that a new URL stuff right now? Isn't that relatively new?
No, he's been around for a while.
No, he does not speak.
He doesn't speak.
Yeah, don't give him the speed.
I was asking.
But if you would like to speak to his spokesman, he will be happy to pass on the message to the stuff writer right here.
It'll be a telegram too, so it'll take a while.
Only written communication.
Signals?
Signals. Smoke signals. You can send them up. Right through there. All right, everybody's up. Victoria, you here?
I have a question.
Sir.
When we were walking through, you said we were walking on the Alabama line.
Yes.
Approximately how many soldiers would have been in there?
You are fantastic. All right. All right. So I told you that he had 5 regiments, and he's only taken. O'Neill is only taken in 3 regiments into the advance. That's going to be the 6th Alabama, the 26th, and the 12th. 6th, 26th, and 12th. That's from left to right. Or another way to put it, out of 1,688 men, he's only putting in the line about 1,000, 1,018 is what I would calculate that. Rhodes states that as the advance began, he asserted, he is ticked off in this post-battle report. He states that as the advance began, he asserted the exact point on which the left of O'Neill's brigade was to strike. So you're now set up on the axis of advance. This railroad would not have been here at the time of the battle. And as we get out to the, we clear these woods. I'm trying to keep y'all in the shade as long as possible. As we clear these woods right out here, you'll see the vista open up. And the left probably would have been somewhere over here. See, what I'm asking you to do is take out this alignment with your imagination right here and put the slope back in, because that slope, see how much dirt they put up here to build this railroad up? This slope would have continued all the way down in just one continuous fashion. So the Alabamians would have been roughly, the left would have been approximately right over here, somewhere in this vicinity. The 5th Alabama would have been on the other side, but they're not moving into the attack. Am I talking too fast? All right. Always have. I always see good to see the old way to do it. You know, I got all this, whoever he is, right over here. And then there's the note takers. You don't see those too much anymore.
Got one right back here.
I know, I was talking about her. The Union forces who would continue to deploy. Well, let's walk up a little bit so you can see it. Please watch your step. If you've never played on railroad tracks when you were a kid, they are uneven. Okay, so I like to just walk on the ties, but you suit yourself. Okay, as an accountant.
Let's get you.
That wasn't me. Diesel train back there.
It is not.
Ooh, I heard it.
I'm telling you, there's like 11:30 or something.
I know who fast
Or the slowest. However you want to look at it.
You'll read about them in the paper.
Yeah.
Well, maybe he will.
Former park ranger.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if we really got something coming, we'll go ahead and. Now, I hope it's starting to make sense to you. There's the Union position up there. Now look at where you are. Look at where we came from. Look at the slope of that hill y'all just crossed right there. Going down that ridge that runs north and south right through here. The Alabamians are going to be advancing on the side of this hill right through here and advancing straight toward that observation tower and the Union position. Most people, we'll get a little closer, maybe we'll be able to see it, but most people fail to realize that the Union flank was actually, not all of them were facing this way. They actually had some units, as I'm about to describe to you, that were facing at right angles, that will be opposing them. But we're going to go up there. The Union forces continue to deploy, and the brigade that was deploying was Henry Baxter's brigade of John Robinson's division. I believe John Hoptack did a walk on one of those regiments, didn't he?
Yep, 3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago. The vanguard of the brigade, I forget which regiment he did, the 11th Pennsylvania and the 97th New York emerged from the tree line. That's the one over there, not this one. This is the initial force that Rhodes saw from the hill. Baxter finds that the enemy is in such strong force that he calls up the rest of the brigade and deploys them at right angles. Therefore, facing to the west or toward us, starting at the woods, is the 11th Pennsylvania, 97th New York, followed by the 12th Massachusetts by the road.
Where's that train whistle coming from?
From west.
Well, it's probably coming down parallel in Chambersburg Pike then, right?
Yeah.
Now, which way is he going to go once he gets behind the ridge?
Make it right.
We're not going to stay on the tracks. Unless he just comes barreling through here at 100 miles an hour, I would expect we'd have time. You know, he's going to have to slow down for that intersection. I hope. At right angles, facing north, is the 83rd New York, the 90th Pennsylvania, and the 88th Pennsylvania. So, if I've got this right, from left to right, and this is at right angles to each other, facing where the monuments are, where I pointed to you from the first stop, 11th Pennsylvania, 97th New York, 12th Massachusetts. 12th Mass is by that observation tower. At right angles, facing north, is the 83rd New York, 90th Pennsylvania, and 88th Pennsylvania. So that's what they're up against. Now let's talk about Edward O'Neill right here. He's 44 years old at the time of the battle. In the pre-war days, he did not gain any experience that would further his career as a military officer. However, he was well connected, and this led to an officer's appointment early in the war in Rhodes, Alabama Brigade. This is a good story. Therefore, when Rhodes, somebody was just asking me about this, when Rhodes assumed division command, O'Neill became, by seniority, the brigade commander, because he was the senior colonel in the brigade. This Rhodes would not acquiesce to. Rhodes actually recommended 2 other commanders to come on, John B. Gordon or John T. Morgan for command. Not the John Morgan, but another John T. Morgan. None of these commanders were available, and Richmond eventually forwarded a brigade commission for O'Neill. I've never heard of this before or since. You probably read it, haven't you, sir? Lee had the commission returned to Richmond after Gettysburg. O'Neill, though, continued to press his claims, utilizing the governor of Alabama and various politicians in his support. In 1864, O'Neill advanced the novel idea that his pay was inadequate for his family, and he needed a general's commission to make ends meet. Whether Lee saw this note or not is not known, but he certainly must have been flabbergasted by it if he did. 2 weeks later, and you have to work really hard to make Robert E. Lee write something like this, okay? Because he doesn't like writing stuff like this. 2 weeks later, Lee finally stated that, quote, he had made more particular inquiries into his capacity, O'Neill's capacity to command the brigade, and I cannot recommend him to the command. What basically probably happened is he had his staff officer go ask Robert Rhodes, do you want O'Neill in charge of this brigade? And he got the answer. And so with the politics of it, who does Lee want more, O'Neill or Robert Rhodes? And that was it. O'Neill would remain a colonel. But back at Gettysburg, O'Neill had an attack to make. All right, so we're going to go forward a little bit. I'm going to get off the railroad track, but I want to clear the snake rail fence before we do that. We're going to get on the other side, and we'll see where there's the ditch gets deeper up there by that cedar tree. So we're going to try to find a good place to cross, and we'll get up in that grass and follow the fence. No, that's pretty much the historic tree line. This would have been an orchard. Yeah, I'm impressed with myself. Yeah, so here's...
These don't look too healthy.
I want to be Oscars, who I want to be. Aww. House catches on fire. If I was him, I'd be worried. Don't like you gonna get saved. All right, so what did I tell you? I said the 6th, 26th, and the 12th. Now you can see. Yes, over there in that field of corn. Right over there. That's where the 11th Corps is going to be. I don't know, every farmer we rented a field to this year planted corn. Have y'all noticed that?
Yeah, you can't see it.
I know. I was telling the natural resource guy the other day, he had no clue. He doesn't think about stuff like that. I said, the corn's too high. What do you mean it's too high? It's been raining, hasn't it? Well, all right. So there's the 11th Corps. We can't see it very well, but if you look over that second tree line, the taller trees right there, if you look between that gap in the trees, you can barely see a monument, which is over there. And to the left, right behind the trees, is going to be Barlow's Knoll. All right, so I hope you're oriented to where you are right now. So the 11th Corps is going to be positioned this way, okay? And there's going to be a gap, basically, between the end of the 11th Corps, which is that roughly that field of corn, and the end of the 1st Corps. I'm talking Union right now, which is that tree line right up there in that direction, off to the south. All right, so I don't have that many accounts as far as the Alabamians from O'Neill. You get down to 1,000 men in an attack, and I guess it's, you know, they just didn't have that many riders. Robert Park is one of the major sources, though. He was a captain in the 12th Alabama, and he remembered the battle this way. Park stated that Union batteries killed and wounded several in the regiment, including the Baptist preacher. What kind of people shoot the preacher? As the regiment advanced to the charge, Park recalled, We ran then some distance and halted. I imagine there's Union skirmishers out here, what he's talking about. We ran then some distance and halted. There Lieutenant Wright was wounded in the head by my side. I spoke to him, and he calmly asked me to examine his wound and tell him frankly whether I thought it would prove fatal. I looked at his bloody head, lifted the hair from over the wound, and found his brain exposed. No, that's not good. The bone on top of his head having been carried away. Whew. I answered him cheerfully and reassuringly. Yeah. Bidding him lie close to the ground until he could be removed. I gave him some water out of my canteen and made him lie down as low as possible. That's probably going to be right in here, in this vicinity where this happens. As the bullets were passing thick and fast by and over us, and often striking someone nearby. He goes on to say, this is his words, our gallant Jew major smoked his cigars calmly and coolly in the thickest of the fighting. Nobody knows whether to laugh or not. Can't do that anymore, can you? Colonel S.B. Pickens of the 12th Alabama, whose regiment advanced on top of the ridge, same one as Park is in, simply stated, quote, after a desperate fight of about 15 minutes, we were compelled to fall back as the regiment on our left, the 26th, gave way and was being flanked by a large force. All right, so look at where we came from. We're going to continue the advance. I'm basically going to take you through this little swell right here, and we're going to get on that next rise over there, and we're going to stop again. I'm going to read you some Union accounts once we get in the driveway. One.
Oh, you meant the
advance marker?
Yeah, it's over.
Somewhere. Can't see it. All right, y'all coming? My God, then I'll just start without you. All right, I pulled you up here. Where did the Alabamians advance to? Y'all gonna have to get closer by this road. No pun intended. Oh, I thought it was the train. Oh, it's not the train. It's a bunch of Harleys. I was like, oh man, too bad. All right, now look where we came from. Look at the Alabamians advance. Look at how far we came out of that wood line, which is over here. Now you can see the peace light. You can see where we started the tour from, Oak Hill, etc. Now you get a good picture of what O'Neill is up against as he's coming forward. So you got the 12th, the 26th, and the 6th Alabama. 5th Alabama is back there in that wood line behind the house in that general area, and the 3rd Alabama is back there in those woods. All right, so approximately somewhere in here is going to be the advance, the crest, I guess you could say, high water mark of the Alabamians advance on July 1st. I don't know the exact spot, but roughly, approximately in this area. The reason I say that is because of the account I'm about to read to you, and I was hoping, still can't see it very well because of that orchard, but if you look beneath the orchard trees, you can barely see the base of a monument right over here, and that is going to be the right flank of the Union line, or basically where that road, behind that railroad sign right there, back in that wood line, where I'm talking about. John Vaudier of the 88th Pennsylvania recalled, quote, about noon, heavy columns of the enemy were discerned moving over to the right in the direction of the Mummittsburg Road, necessitating a corresponding prolongation of our line on that flank. Baxter quickly dressed his line and received the Confederate fire as their line of battle, covered by a cloud of skirmishers, came driving through the woods from the right of the Mummittsburg Road. Waiting until they were within easy range, the order was given. Commence firing. With the sharp crack of the muskets, a fleecy cloud of smoke rolled down the front of the brigade, and the many balls zipped and buzzed with a merry chorus toward the southern line, which halted and after a brief contest retired to the shelter of the wood. After approximately 30 minutes, This includes the advance. The 5th Alabama is ordered into the attack. You will recall, as I just said, that the 5th had been held back on the left flank to connect with Dole's brigade. Dole's brigade is over there where that modern school is. Colonel J.M. Hall recalled of the 5th. Orders were sent to me to advance on the enemy, composed of 2 heavy lines of infantry in front and a line of sharpshooters supported by infantry and artillery on my left flank. He's talking about the 11th Corps line over there. The enemy in front was engaged by the right wing. Remember, it's how you're facing me would be the right wing. The left having been thrown back at right angles with the rest of the line to engage the flanking party. That's probably the 45th New York he's talking about as the flanking party. The regiment fought in this position until I was informed that the troops on my right were falling back. That makes me believe the 5th Alabama is probably in that plain down there. Or else I can't understand why he can't see what's going on. Now, you want to get Robert Rhodes going. This is really going to, if he wasn't ticked off by now, he's smoking. Now, when Rhodes saw the initial attack going well, he personally rode to the 5th to order it in. He wrote, I found that Colonel O'Neill, instead of personally superintending the movements of his brigade, had chosen to remain with his reserve regiment. Rhodes blamed the entire repulse on O'Neill's actions. O'Neill added to his woes by informing Rhodes that he and his staff were not mounted. They didn't bring the horses. I don't know where they were, but they weren't up. Therefore, to Rhodes' chagrin, he had to dispatch one of his own staff officers back to the woods to try to get the 3rd Alabama up in the line too. Of course, by this time, it was too late. Somebody was asking me about Daniel's brigade and where Rhodes is and why he wasn't superintending. Well, look at the battlefield. If Rhodes is down here at the repulse of O'Neill's brigade, he can't see. If he's down in Defilade, he can't see what's happening up on top of the hill, if he's there at that moment. All right, of the 6th, 26th, and 12th, left to right, 12th being on the right, out of the 1,000 men that attacked initially, the 6th Alabama took in 382 men and lost 162. That will be right down there. That's 42%. 26th Alabama in the center, which would be approximately right here, 319 men, they lost 130. That is 41%. The 12th Alabama, which is up here where we are, 317 men, they lost 83, which is roughly about 26%. Makes me wonder if the 12th Alabama came out of that swell that's right there, or they halted right there. That sure is light casualties for somebody that should be the most exposed. So they probably, I would suspect, the bullets, most of the bullets were going over their head. So, yeah. So the Union, in other words, is going to send out a flanking party. They got the 45th New York here, and they're going to send out Pennsylvanians, right where you see the modern railroad right there. And they're going to flank these Alabamians and just basically drive them back. By the time the 5th Alabama gets up, the whole, I would imagine that it was all over with by the time they got here. So they just march out here and get shot up for nothing, in other words. Any questions?
See, the 11th Corps had 2 brigades facing O'Neill, more or less?
Yes, more or less. They've got one brigade, I thought, extended. The 1st brigade on the field is extended as skirmishers. Yeah. The way I remember.
Almost 10%.
Von Ansberg, and they go out, and the reserve brigade is. Say it again. Shizanowski. In the south, that's Krizanowski, like Crisco. Krizanowski. Shizanowski. Right there. All right, so yeah, so basically the reserve line, well, you can see the monuments for yourself. Look in the middle of that corn patch. You can see the monuments right there on Howard Avenue. And now you can clearly see Barlow's Knoll. You can see the flagpole at the crest of the hill over there. off in the distance. So the entire 11th Corps line is right in front of you. Yes, ma'am. Well, that's no, we don't know that. And to be honest, I'm funning with you, but to be honest, the casualties would be the problem with the Union casualties is they would be combined with a lot more fighting, and they would also lose. I don't know, John Hoptak could tell you, they would lose a lot in the town, I'm sure, through capture, getting cut off. So I'm sure it wouldn't be I couldn't tell you the spot on casualties for the attack. But they bested the Alabamians here. What do y'all think of O'Neill?
The casualties of the day, not for the engagement.
Yes, for the day, but I couldn't isolate them for the particular engagement. Yes.
Maybe more. Maybe they've have anybody else.
Yeah.
They've run low on company leadership.
Maybe. If you haven't found it in 50,000 pages, I don't think you're going to find it. All right, y'all, we're going to get up to the road. This is, why don't we do this? I don't like this spot, to be honest, because a car can pop. I'm worried about cars coming from this way. Let's go up here to the intersection so we can see the traffic coming. We'll cross over, and we'll go over here to the Union side, and we'll look at from their angle, and we'll bring up Iverson. We won't be spending as much time on Iverson, but we'll complete it.
Yeah, you couldn't be an actor. He does all No, we hate the Raiders. Everybody hates the Raiders. Yeah. The North just hates each other. Let's just admit we all hate each other.
I'll tell you though, I heard more than one person when Peyton Manning and the Colts went to the Super Bowl. More than one person from Baltimore went there before. Even though
when they were when they were the Colts. I know the way the coach did Luck was classic. Yeah, that was classic.
That owner just bought David Gilmour's guitar.
I can believe that. Or say he's a real piece of work. Well, at least they paid. At least they gave him his pay.
Robert. Yeah, his father was the one that loaded up the moving vans. Robert, middle of the night.
Robert Ursay. Yeah, Robert. And they talk about
they were going to stay.
That's what the limits of tape are. This is a family show. It used to be. All right, if you're behind me, please watch yourself. You got your back to the traffic. All right, so we're going to do not as much time, and the corn, that field of corn right there has taken away my ability to walk y'all out there this year, so I apologize. Alfred Iverson was born in Clinton, Georgia. This is the other brigade that's supposed to be backing up O'Neill. He was born on February 14th. Is that Valentine's Day? 1829. At the young age of 17, he obtained a commission as a second lieutenant in Seymour's Battalion of Georgia Volunteers, a unit his father had raised for the Mexican War. He mustered out the next year. In 1855, Iverson gained a commission in the newly formed 1st U.S. Cavalry. As a first lieutenant, he served in Bleeding, Kansas in 56 and moved to Carlisle Barracks in 57. Iverson went to Utah the same year on the Mormon expedition. The Mormon expedition is when the Mormons decided they weren't going to pay taxes anymore. Well, they pay taxes. And he spent the next 2 years after that in Oklahoma. Iverson resigned. In fact, I believe the Mormon expedition is the largest collection of the U.S. Army. What? After the Mexican War, between, yeah. Anybody remember what the number was on that call? A couple thousand, I want to say. Iverson resigned his commission in the U.S. Army in March of '61. After nearly recruiting a whole regiment, he assumed command of the 20th North Carolina, and he and the regiment were transferred to Virginia in time for the 7 Days campaign. That's going to be June of '62. Iverson suffered a wound but returned in time for the '62 Maryland campaign, which resulted, where did that guy go? Which resulted in Sharpsburg. Boston? During the Battle of South Mountain, Iverson took over the brigade. So he gains command prior to the battle. He gained a brigadier general's commission to date from November 1st of 62. He and his men did not materially participate in the Battle of Fredericksburg, but his brigade did acquit themselves admirably at Chancellorsville. So there is no foreboding with Alfred Iverson. He should have the experience. All right, but here's where things start sliding off for him. When Iverson assumed command of the brigade in November, he contrived to block Major Nelson Slough, S-L-O-U-G-H, Slough, how you say it? Slough? When y'all ever going to get yourselves together? Y'all go over there and talk it over and come back and tell me how you want me to pronounce this, right? Slough? Was that it? All right. Slough. From assuming command, he tried to block the major. How about the major? From assuming command of the 20th by bringing in one of his friends. 26 officers from the regiment signed a letter of protest against the action. Iverson refused to forward the document to headquarters or to Richmond, and they sent it anyway. On December 27th, 1862, Iverson had all 26 officers arrested. Probably for what?
Telling the truth.
Richmond overruled him, Iverson, and the officers were reinstated. However, Iverson later rejected all the officers a promotion who had opposed him. The 20th North Carolina entered Gettysburg not liking Alfred Iverson very much. Now let's get to the point right here. There is a story, which is true, that when the Confederates got to Carlisle, this is going to be Rhodes Division, Ewell's Corps, I forget if it was just Rhodes Division or somewhere else. At that point, at Carlisle, before the Battle of Gettysburg, this is the first time in front of the entire division that the second national Confederate flag is going to be unveiled. And if you don't know what that is, you don't see it often, but it's basically a white sheet with a red Confederate battle flag in the corner. They didn't have it in service too long because it being white, it always got mistaken for a truce flag. So they put a red bar on the end of it to make the third national. But the second national was basically like 90% completely white. Well, they unveiled this flag at Carlisle Barracks, and something got out of hand there. Campbell Brown, who was the stepson of Richard Ewell, said that he was on this platform with the generals speaking to the soldiers. You know, they're giving them patriotic speeches. And they were drinking German lager. Campbell Brown thought it had been spiked with whiskey. All right, which I doubt it had. I don't know why you do that. But probably it was just strong beer. And, you know, they're probably used to drinking near beer. You know, beer back then might be, you know, they drank a lot of beer, but their beer might have only been 2, 3, 4%. You know, they weren't drinking these Belgian triple hop things you see in the middle of the night in strange places in downtown. At 9.5%. A few of the generals, I'm trying to remember exactly who that was. One of the generals had to be pulled down. And I'm trying to remember who that general was. But he basically had to be let off the stage because he wasn't coherent while he was talking. Look it up. But the point is, Alfred Iverson was on that stage. Now, I don't have any direct account of Alfred Iverson drinking one sip of beer. All right? So basically what's happening here is we're convicting him by association. All right? I got a girl here that should be able to appreciate that. Conviction by association. She's a lawyer. there is a story. That story of the unveiling the Second National leads some historians to believe that Alfred Iverson was still hung over on July 1st. All right, or some people rationalize, if you want to call it that, his behavior by what happened at Carlisle Barracks. I'm just giving you the backdrops of that. And we'll come back to that in just a minute. Okay, so Rhodes' division is advancing down the Carlisle Road, and they come up, and he launches the attack. Iverson jumps off, and apparently Iverson is late. You know, you can get your own maps out, as I told you at the beginning of the tour. Some people have Iverson advancing from that wood line straight ahead. Other people, for me, I would think Iverson is advancing from behind the peace light. That would make the most sense, but, you know, to each his own. The brigade advanced from left to right. 5th North Carolina, 20th North Carolina, 23rd North Carolina, and 12th. 5th, 20th, 23rd, and 12th. The brigade numbered roughly 1,400 men, but some losses in Chancellorsville had not been made up. You talk about a handicap, starting with the match handicap. Where'd the golf pro go? Right there. The 5th North Carolina, he's a nice guy, isn't he? You like your Uncle Doug. The 5th North Carolina, for instance, did not have any field officers. That means major or above. And soon lost 4 captains during the advance. So they entered the advance in charge of a captain and soon lost 4 of them. That'd be 4 out of 10. The 20th North Carolina lost their major and lieutenant colonel right after the advance began. To add to the brigade's handicap, Iverson was not with his men. You getting this? This is a common refrain on this tour. He remained behind, much like O'Neill, but close enough to see what was about to happen. One North Carolinian recalled that, quote, our brigade commander, after ordering us forward, did not follow us in that advance, and our alignment soon became false. Nobody's leading them. There seems to have been an utter ignorance of the force crouching behind the stone wall. So, I brought you up here because here's the stone wall. And here's the Union. You can follow the monuments on down through here, and Iverson's brigade would be advancing. Basically, if they would have gone straight, they would have marched at right angles past here. At some point, they're going to wheel. We'll let this car pass, and I'll do a little dance for y'all. But they're going to... talk about late for the program. Iverson's brigade is basically, the soldiers can see them and whoever's leading the regiments, but they got nobody to lead the brigade. So they're basically going to wheel. I'm not saying this is the most parade ground solid wheel that ever happened. You probably want to picture it regiment by regiment. It probably looked very sloppy, to say the least, because they're getting shot at. But those North Carolinians are going to get out into right here directly in front of you. What I'm trying to show you, in other words, is the Union is right here. All right, and as I'll tell you in just a second, those units, those Pennsylvanians that have been shooting at O'Neill, are going to reverse themselves. So they talk about literally reversing themselves and coming back to the stone wall and going from shooting Alabamians to shooting North Carolinians. So that clearly says to me that O'Neill's attack is over by the time Iverson gets in here. The other thing I wish to show you is that there are Union troops in those woods over there. Not only are they along the stone wall, but they're in the woods. So from this vantage point, you got North Carolinians. There's basically 3 regiments out here in front of you. If you got Union soldiers here shooting this way, and you got Union soldiers shooting this way, what are the North Carolinians walking into? A crossfire. They're walking into a crossfire. Crossfire hurricane.
They couldn't see them, right? Wasn't this land higher, or definitely more pronounced attack like that before?
Well, I think the Union troops are lying down. You know, and but regardless of what the ground is doing, I don't know why you couldn't see the flags. I doubt they take the flags down. You know, it's just they're just rudderless. Is what they are. They're just adrift. And there's nobody running the show. All right. Nevertheless, unwarned, unled as a brigade, went forward Iverson's deserted band to its doom, wrote a North Carolinian. All right. Iverson's men aimed for the southeast corner of the woods, quote, as evenly as if on parade. Compounding the errors, the brigade did not deploy any skirmishers. So skirmishers, if you don't know, are your bird dogs, right? The bird dog is supposed to go out there and flush the game for you, flush them quail off the ground. But if you don't have any skirmishers, you have nobody developing the Union position. So the North Carolinians are just walking into it sight unseen. A Union soldier recalled that, quote, Iverson's men with arms at right shoulder came on in splendid array, keeping step with an almost perfect line, as orderly as if on brigade drill, while behind the stone wall the Union soldiers with rifles cocked and fingers on the triggers waited and bided their time, feeling confident. This is my worst nightmare. If I was a soldier, this would be the worst. When within 100 yards of the wall, quote, the dense line of the enemy rose from its protected lair and poured into us a withering fire. A Union soldier recalled, quote, a sheet of fire and smoke from the wall, flashing full in the face of the Confederates who at once halted, and though their men were falling like leaves in a storm, that's the name of a book, I believe, attempted to make a stand and return the bitter fire. The North Carolinians took shelter under a small swell in front of the Union line. That swell is basically right inside that corn patch, I would imagine. There's not much of a swell left there today. I don't care, though, if it was 3 inches. All right, that's the biggest hole that I ever saw if I'm out there. I guarantee you I could get in it. Whatever they need, I can start digging. All right. Can we go? Is the 88th advance marker in the corn patch, or is there? Is it?
Yeah, trail goes right out there.
Is it in the corn patch or not?
No, it's okay.
Okay. All right. Let's walk on out here in the field. I've got that right there, portion of Iverson.
Soldier, the account of a soldier that was killed here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
How can that be possible?
The accounts from another gentleman about the man.
Oh, okay.
He said, how do you like it?
I know what you mean. I was giving you a hard time. Yeah.
Everywhere. At least one thing could give you a hard time.
Number 1 volunteer. Lord, people. Yeah.
So Matt, you mentioned earlier that the flags would have been up there, and they say that they don't see them. Part of that might have been because of all the smoke.
Well, look behind you now. I mean,
and it would have been higher because it would have graded that road.
Yeah, but I can't imagine it would, you know, I don't discount what you're saying, but I can't imagine it would be that much higher, you know.
What was planted in the field?
Say
What was planted in the field?
You know, I was just thinking about that. Wheat. Have I got that right? Does anybody know?
But you know what I think I remember reading is that they put report guns down further enough to the Union regiments to hit the North Carolinians with cover. So that would imply they went higher, and this was, I mean, it's in France.
Oh, they gonna hit them. Yeah.
They stayed there the whole day.
Yeah.
Was there anybody on the Union side in charge of tactical command of the Army at this point, or was each corps on its own?
Howard would be in charge, and he would be back at Cemetery Hill. He would be the headquarters of it, which would leave I guess you would still, I'd have to think about it. Doubleday, I would think, would be in charge of the first corps, right? And then that would bump up Schurz. The North Carolinians took shelter under a small swell and in front of the Union line. I don't know if you call this a swell or not, but you can see how the ground slopes upward. Men fell in scores before the concentrated fire. Quote, I believe every man who stood up was either killed or wounded, recalled a 20th North Carolinian. Another soldier from the 23rd claimed that Gettysburg was the only battle where the, quote, where the blood ran like a branch. And that too on the hot, parched ground. The Confederates were in a jam. They couldn't advance and they couldn't retreat. Quote, the men lay down in a hollow, or a depression in the field and fought as best they could, recalled a North Carolinian. Eventually, Iverson's men started to wave handkerchiefs and other tokens of surrender, and hundreds of Confederate soldiers rushed over the wall and were told to go toward the rear. The aftermath was horrible. A private in the 23rd North Carolina claimed his regiment emerged with 60 men. Once again, from left to right, it's the 5th NC, the 20th NC, the 23rd, and the 12th. 5th, 20th, 23rd, and 12th. They took into the charge 1,384 men. Starting right here with the 5th North Carolina on the left, they took in 473 men and they lost 289. That's 61%. The 20th North Carolina, which is approximately where we are, they took in 372 men and lost 253. 68. The 12th took in 219 men and lost 79. Okay, and the reason for that is they didn't get into this. They were on the other side of that corner of the woods. I won't bother walking y'all over half of creation, but that's the reason the casualties are lighter over there. The 23rd, which is going to be the one on the right flank, roughly over there at the edge of the woods, they took in 316 men and they lost 282. That's 89%. Now they would be in the biggest pinch because they would be furthest in and they would have the hardest time getting out of there. So they lose it. Now I need to qualify that. I have the casualties broken down here. Out of 1,384 men, I have approximately 225. Yeah, out of roughly around those casualties, there's roughly around 325 prisoners in those 4 regiments. If my math is correct right here. So, you know, when I talk about losing 89%, so 282 men break out to 65 killed, 120 wounded, 97 captured. After the battle, the Confederate artillerists noted, because he counted them, 79 North Carolina soldiers all in a row, laying right out here. The line, quote, was perfectly dressed. 3 had fallen to the front, and the rest had fallen backwards. Yet the feet of all these dead men were in a perfectly straight line. Iverson, end of quote. Iverson's men were gathered up and buried in 4 shallow burial trenches. And these trenches afterwards became known as Iverson's pits.
Where was that?
Reportedly, it's right out here in front of these, on the other side of these monuments.
The bodies, are they later exhumed?
Oh yeah, yeah, they would get them. They couldn't. That's a hard thing to miss. Right there. I imagine they were all taken to Raleigh. I'd have to look that up to verify it, but surely they knew they were digging North Carolinians. So, exhuming North Carolinians. And so, the ones they could identify, they'd ship to the various states. So that wouldn't surprise me if they were there. I was told 20 years ago, so you take it for what it's worth, that by a licensed guide, I forget who, people tell me stuff all the time, that when the snow falls, in Gettysburg that the last place to melt on this field is roughly, approximately, what the outline of that is the pits. The small depression which is right there.
Matt, I was out here in January. All this out here was like a lake. That's stuff from the town. It's like a lake. It was all...
With the melted snow and everything.
All that here,
Where was I going with that? This also goes along with the ghost stories. One of the original ghost stories was there was orbs emanating from Iverson's pits, which that is, I'd have to look up the source, but that is a primary account. People did see lights coming out of these pits, but what we think it was basically methane from the decomposing bodies, and the gas was leaking up out of the ground with all those bodies in there, and it was making some kind of strange lights as it came up through there in the darkness. It's a shame either way. Quote, I like this one. Deep and long must the desolate homes and orphan children of North Carolina rue the rashness of that hour. All right. Now, let's finish off Iverson. You think Robert Rhodes isn't torqued yet? He just got through. He's probably over here with O'Neill. And then he probably, I don't know how it all happened, but somebody probably came and told him that something else was amiss on the right with Iverson. Okay, for Iverson, as his men were slaughtered, this is where he messes up. He sent a message to Rhodes, quote, that one of his regiments had raised the white flag and gone over to the enemy. So he's looking back there at the peace light, and he sees these Confederates. They started getting the ramrods out and tying on pieces of cloth and waving them over their head. And the Union soldiers, what this monument's to, the Union soldiers started coming out here as the fire started to slacken, and they started to gather up prisoners from Iverson's men. And Iverson reports to Rhodes that one of his regiments has completely, basically deserted or surrendered. And that's not true. Of course, Rhodes knew of Iverson's behavior, and certainly, in short order, General Robert E. Lee knew too. Soon after, the men of the North Carolinians, the soldiers, also knew. And one remarked, quote, not only did Iverson remain in the rear, but that a big chestnut log intervened between him and the battle, and that more than once he reminded his staff that for more than one at a time to look over the log was an unnecessary exposure of person. One of Ramser's men said, quote, Iverson was quote, drunk, I think, and a coward besides, and had been off hiding somewhere. Campbell Brown, Richard Ewell's stepson, wrote that Rhodes, Daniel, and others, quote, knew of the well-known cowardly behavior of Iverson. I don't know. In conclusion, I don't know if he's a coward or he's just drunk. Or both. Maybe he's a drunk coward. How about that?
Maybe he's drunk because he is a coward.
Maybe he's drunk because he is a coward. That's the even better one. Anybody got another take on it?
Cowardly drunkard.
Cowardly drunkard, the young man says. Right here. Regardless, if you don't know the end of the story, you can probably guess it. Right? Does Alfred Iverson stay in the Army of Northern Virginia? No. He gets transferred, look at you, gets transferred to Wheeler's Cavalry, right here down in Georgia, right? Where he actually has a pretty fair, gives a pretty fair account of himself. If I remember right, I believe he's in the Stoneman raid, where they capture George Stoneman. Y'all remember the band? Stoneman's Cavalry? Oh yeah, you gotta know that. The night they drove old Dixie down. That's right. Here's one you haven't heard, though. Get on YouTube and look up Johnny Cash, God Bless Robert E. Lee. Now, Johnny Cash slaughters the history. but it's Johnny Cash. Whatever Johnny Cash wants to say, that's fine with me. Right there. You're looking it up now, ma'am, huh? Okay, you gonna mark that down for you?
Wow.
I don't know. It's basically a bloody debacle for or initial debacle for Robert Rhodes' division. I can't think of how it would have gone any worse than the way it did. The attack he meant to get into with O'Neill and Iverson just completely unravels on him, and he ends up losing. What is that total right there? He ends up losing approximately half of Iverson's brigade and probably about a third of O'Neill's brigade. And for somebody like Robert Rhodes, who's in his, I believe, his second battle as division commander, this is not something that you want to have happen. This is embarrassing to him. If you add to that layer right here, his old brigade is involved in this, troops that he knows that are competent because he's led them before. And you start adding in the conduct of these two generals right here who don't even lead their commands forward, you got problems. You got real problems. If you had a time machine, Robert Rhodes probably was saying things that weren't fit for, ladylike company to both of them. And if you go home, read the report for yourself. He is spitting venom even after, a month's time about what's happened on this debacle on July 1st. It's too bad. It's too bad. The sad thing to me about it, the saddest thing about the whole affair to me is that Robert Rhodes, and he knows this, these men get killed for nothing. They basically get killed due to incompetence, is what they do. And you can't, as I told you back at the last stop, this is my worst nightmare right here, being out in the middle of this field and being pinned down and nowhere to go. I don't know what I'd do until I was in that position. Oh yeah, I'd run back or something. I don't know what I'd do if my life was on the line. Can you imagine such a thing? And everybody's getting shot around you. It's just a pure slaughter and you can't defend yourself. This is the worst scenario for me on a battlefield. And I would hate, of course I wouldn't know it because I'd be dead, but I would hate to get killed over such things too. You'd like to say you died on a noble charge and achieving an objective or doing something for your country. They ain't doing anything.
On your belly in a battle.
And you're laying on your belly with the blood running under you. It's too bad. Right out here. Well, I wish I had a better ending, especially for my southern friends that are out on the tour today. For my northern friends, I'm sure you've enjoyed the tour very much. They're out here today, and you looked at her. She looked at you too, right? You loved every minute of that, didn't you? Okay, folks. I have got, 12:30? I went about 30 minutes over. I've got the Care of the Wounded program at 2 o'clock back at the Visitor Center, and I'm going to try at my best to get me one cold Coke between now and then before I have to do that other one. Thank y'all very much. I appreciate it.